Hello, everyone. I'm trying something I have not done before, so we'll see how this works. So, for this vlog, sorry, I'm going to move so you can all see my background. So, what this vlog or whatever is going to talk about is one of my all time favorite movies. It's Stand By Me. Now, if you're not familiar with the movie or haven't seen it, you may not want to watch this stream. But if you haven't seen it, you still want to listen, that's cool too, because I'm going to be going deep and, spoilers will come out. So, okay, so Stand By Me was released or came out in 1986 and was directed by Rob Reiner, which we all know what recently happened to him. May he rest in peace. Sorry. But it's a great film, and if you have not already seen it, I think everybody should. It's one of those movies that it's sends good messages, and it's just great. One of the best ones ever made, in my opinion. So I was introduced to the movie when I was about, I don't know, 10 or 11 years old, and I was kind of around the boys' age, I guess. I don't remember how old they were in the movie, but um, I was around that age, I guess, and it just kind of it drew me in and had a significant impact on me, and I've loved it ever since. It's become one of my favorites. It's actually in my top five, one of my top five favorite films. So it is based off the book The Body by Stephen King, who is a great author. I love his movies. He is a great he's got some good stories to tell, and this is one of his that I would recommend to anybody. And he is a horror writer, even though the genre for this movie I don't think is horror per se. It's more of a, I'd say, action adventure. And there isn't much, it's not like a scary movie like The Shining or Misery or Pet Cemetery. Because when you think Stephen King, that's the kind of themes and the movies instantly come to mind. Well, for me at least, but for this, Stand By Me is based off of one of his books. So, so to give a little bit of rundown about the film, it's in a nutshell, it's about these four boys. They're about, I don't know, 11 or 12, and they go search for a dead body. Hence the title of the book, The Body. Um, I believe it got its title from one of the songs by, oh, who is that? Who sings that? It's at the end of the movie. But anyway, yeah, it somehow that inspired it to be called Stand By Me. And it's, I guess the title stuck with Rob Reiner, and he just decided to call it that, and it works well. So we got the four boys who have their own struggles and their own, challenges going on with their lives. So we got Gordon, who was played by Will Wheaton. He is grieving because he had lost his brother in a car crash recently. And I believe, what is his brother's name? I can't remember. But his brother, they show him briefly, like in a flashback. He was played by John Cusack, which, it is sad to see because in the flashbacks, they really bonded together. Like, what is his older brother's name? Maybe it'll come to me later, but his brother gave him a Yankee cap, which symbolizes, that they or they were very, you could tell they were very close. And, his brother gave him the ball cap, which, gets stolen from him at the beginning of the movie. So that's kind of shows that people can be heartless and don't care about what's special to them, and, things that are, important, and what objects and items, can have a significant impact on your life. So that's Gordon. Chris, who is played by River Phoenix, rest in peace. He is Walking Phoenix's brother. He comes from a bad family in the movie, and his older brother is part of a bad gang, I guess, which, you know, he's got a bad reputation. And then we got Teddy, who is played by Corey Feldman, who has appeared in The Goonies and among other stuff too. Um, his father is a vet, which he mentions that he fought in Normandy. Because I remember at one point he was upset because somebody, when they were at that junkyard, the guy who runs it, I guess, was insulting his dad, and he got upset and said, "My father stormed the beach of Normandy," and whatever else. So, sorry. But yeah, his father, even though they never showed him, he served in a war, obviously. So um, I'm guessing he may have had PTSD from that's just the vibe I kind of picked up on from that. So, and a thing is, if you remember Teddy's ear, his dad held it to a stove, so you could see one of his ears it's burnt. It looks like it had to have been traumatic for Teddy to go through. So, which is why he kind of is the way he is in the film. And Corey Feldman really plays that role very well. He does a great job. Well, they all do a great job. It's a great cast, but I really want to point out, Corey Feldman's performance of Teddy. And next, Vern, who is played by Jerry O'Connell. His character, he's overweight, and he seems very timid and vulnerable. And, the vibes I get about him is that he's just not sure about himself. And like he's not sure if he will be accepted into society like later in his life. That's the vibe. That's how I always saw Vern's character. And we have Ace, who is played by Kiefer Sutherland. He is the villain in the movie. And Chris, his older brother, is part of that gang I mentioned a little bit ago. His character, how I see it, he's all about power, like a dictator, like has to be in charge. He clearly is the leader of that group. He runs the gang, and anything he says, they're all going to do. And another thing I want to mention is Richard Dreyfuss, who plays Hooper in Jaws, who I have as a poster back here, if you can see. He narrates the film, and he is actually Gordon as an adult when they show him at the end when he was writing, because Gordon, has dreams of becoming a writer, and he clearly pursued becoming that, because at the end of the film, you see Richard Dreyfuss, who is now Gordon as an adult, typing. And which, it's good to see that, he pursued that and stuck to that, and he became a writer. So what is this movie really about? The question, is it really about going to search for a dead kid who recently got hit by a train? Not necessarily. There's some themes and symbolism in it, that go along, and it sends a powerful message. So, friendship. is a big important theme that this movie entails. They always stick together, and you can tell that they care about each other, especially Chris, who I guess is the leader of those four. At the beginning of the film, like when they're going on the train tracks, to search for the kid Ray Brower, who is the one that got hit and killed by the train that they are searching for, because they want to be famous, they want to be heroes, they have good intentions. That's what I always took from that. And so that's what makes it a good story is they're on a adventure, for a good reason. And speaking of that, the adventure, the journey to search for the dead kid is kind of an escape from their realities. Kind of like what, people do when they watch movies or whatever hobbies they have. Going on this, journey or adventure together is a good way to, distract themselves and each other from their struggles that they have going on. And kind of going back to, sorry, I kind of skip around a little bit, but when are they start on the train tracks, they go search for the kid. Um their train starts coming, and they all get off the tracks except for Teddy, who wants to dodge the train, which, obviously is dangerous, so he acts like he's going to dodge the train, and Chris tells him to get off, and Teddy won't get off. And so Chris gets him off. He literally gets on the tracks and pulls him off the train, and Teddy gets mad. And in all reality, Chris did that because he cared for Teddy. No matter how, much Teddy said he was going to get off the tracks. I don't know if he really would have or not, but that right there, sends the message that, Chris, cares for Teddy and Vert and Gordy, and so he is looking out for the gang. So that's right off the bat tells you, that they're a good support system for each other. And like I mentioned earlier, when they were at the junkyard, the guy who owns it, or I guess runs the place or whatever, was insulting the boys and upset Teddy because he was making fun of his dad. And they all supported Teddy for being upset when that occurred. And the train tracks, from what I always took, it symbolizes them transitioning from childhood to, I guess, adolescence or early adulthood. Like they're traveling through the end of their childhood era and into adulthood, and which is, that kind of represents the reality of growing up. At one point in the film, they show a deer, which I believe Gordon is sitting by the tracks and a deer appears. They show it for a few seconds. And, to me, that symbolizes like peace, hope, and like there's lights at the end of the tunnel and stuff like that. So anytime a deer appears in a film, it's not may not always be the case, but it's supposed to like represent, hope or courage, peace, different themes like that. There's also one of the most important parts of the film is when they're on the train tracks and they come across the bridge, and they all want to reroute and go a different way, and Teddy's like, "No, I'm going across that bridge no matter what." So it's like you have to make a choice, and sometimes choices aren't easy. So I think that's one of the messages that Rob Reiner was trying to convey at that part. And of course, They go across the bridge, and what happens? A train comes. So it's literally a life or death scenario. They start running, and they're running for their lives. And they got lucky because I'll go ahead and spoil it. They make it. They managed to get across that bridge and those tracks, even though a train was coming. So choices aren't always easy. And that's, part of an action adventure. There's always going to be challenges and hard choices to make. And that's just part of, growing up. And so I believe that's really a good message. Um, and by the way, if there's anything I did not mention, or if there's anything about the film you would like to share, or what your thoughts or opinions are, please feel free to put that in the comments. Any contributions are welcome. Trying to think of what else we could talk about here. Okay, so as the film goes on, they eventually find the dead the dead kid, Ray Brower. It's one of the saddest parts of the film because he's buried under some branches. They find him, he's dead, and they plan to take the body and I guess turn it into the authorities and become heroes. Right after they find him, of course, the gang, Kiefer Sutherland, who plays Ace, they show up and the two groups butt heads because they both want the body, because they both want to be recognized for finding it and saving it. And what I really appreciate about that is because Gordon and Chris mainly, they spoke up to them and said, no, you're not taking the body. And, they were there first and whatever else. So I think that was a very important aspect of the film is, speaking up to villains and, not letting, Ace, who I mentioned earlier, was all about power and, goes after people who are vulnerable, and to show that they're not as vulnerable as you think, is something I really appreciate about that movie. And, of course, if you've seen the movie, you already know that they don't no neither group ends up taking the dead body. So they just I think they bury it or something, I from what I remember. So the boys head back to they're from Castle Rock, Oregon, and you know, and I believe it's the end of the summer and they're about to start school. So I think that was the conclusion. And I remember when the narration was going at the end that they kind of parted ways, which is another message, if the friends you have when you're a teenager, may not always be the same friends you have when you're older, become an adult. And that's natural. And I believe that's another powerful message, that the film was trying to convey. And like I said, it's a wonderful movie, and the cast is excellent. They play the parts well, and good messages, good themes to it. And it's one of those movies that for me that I can always watch over and over and never get sick of. Um, it's great. I would recommend it to anybody. Of course, if you're listening and you haven't seen, I kind of gave it all away to you, but it'd still be a good watch for you. So I'm gonna wrap things up here and say that I would give this movie a solid 10 out of 10. And I'm interested to hear what other people think. And like I said, if there's something I did not bring up that you want brought up, feel free to drop it in the comments, and feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel Living on Film. And I definitely plan to do more streams here very soon about either if it's a movie review or a vlog. And I've And I would encourage everybody to check out, the previous vlogs I have done on here. There's a couple vlogs and a movie review that recently came out this year, a couple weeks ago. So thanks, everybody. And again, feel free to, add to this, and hope everybody has a good rest of their night. Thank you.